When a major shift happens in society, we're generally trained to look for the explosion.
Right, the big dramatic headline.
Exactly. The moment everything visibly changes forever. But what if the most profound changes aren't explosions at all?
What if they're silent?
Yeah, completely silent, almost invisible, and disguised as pure convenience. Today, we are pulling from a truly thought-provoking April 2026 article from Psychology Today.
That was by Faisal Hoque, right?
Yep, Faisal Hoque. It's titled, Your Next Chapter in the Age of AI. And for you listening, someone who, wants to bypass the surface-level noise and understand the actual mechanisms shifting beneath our daily lives, let's set the premise right out of the gate.
You definitely need to frame this properly.
Right, because we are not talking about robots taking over jobs or some dystopian sci-fi scenario. We're talking about 6 subtle human capacities that are quietly disappearing right under our noses, completely disguised as progress. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the subtlety of this shift is the core mechanism of its danger. I mean, these aren't traumatic losses that trigger our psychological alarms.
No, they're not.
They are quiet erosions. It isn't a thief breaking down your door in the middle of the night. It's the slow realization that the furniture has been rearranged and then removed piece by piece.
Over months or years, yeah.
Exactly, without you ever really noticing. We welcome these changes with open arms because they come packaged as ease and efficiency.
Which brings us to the first major concept from Hoque's piece, which is what AI does best. It makes things fast.
It removes obstacles.
Right. And ironically, that is exactly where the danger begins. Hoque identifies this dynamic as the illusion of ease, leading directly to the collapse of attention.
Because we've been culturally conditioned to believe that ease is an unqualified good.
Absolutely.
The prevailing logic is just, if something requires less effort, it is inherently superior. But that framing ignores a crucial psychological reality.
Which is?
Some forms of difficulty are not obstacles blocking you from the life you want. They are the actual raw materials required to build that life.
That's a great way to put it. And Hoque shares a really grounding anecdote from his childhood in Bangladesh to illustrate this.
The cassette tape story.
Yeah. He talks about how, back then, just trying to get his hands on a Simon and Garfunkel cassette tape required intense, sustained effort.
You really had to work for it.
He had to hunt for it, ask around his community, wait for it to be procured, and because he had to invest all that physical and mental effort, it created a deep, profound attachment to the music when he finally held it in his hands.
Right.
Contrast that with today. You literally just say a magic phrase to the empty air in your living room.
Hey Siri, play Simon and Garfunkel.
Exactly. And the audio is just there in less than a second.
The auditory input is identical, but the relationship to that input is fundamentally altered. Hoque points out a psychological principle here that is vital for understanding human cognition.
And that's about effort, right?
Yeah, effort is the mechanism we use to turn information into knowledge. It is how we convert a mere event into a lasting experience. When you strip away the effort, the experience loses its sticking power in our memory and ultimately in our identity. The brain just doesn't tag it as important because no resources were expended to acquire it.
Think about it like taking a helicopter to the top of a mountain instead of actually hiking it.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. You step out of the cabin, you get the exact same sweeping view of the valley below. You achieved the stated goal.
You're at the top.
You're at the top. But because you bypassed the struggle, you don't have the muscle memory. You don't have the calluses. You lack the deep internal satisfaction of the climb.
Yeah.
The view just means less because you didn't pay the toll to get there.
What's fascinating here is the distinction Hoque makes between 2 very different types of friction.
Okay, breaks it down.
So there is procedural friction, which AI absolutely should eliminate. I mean, if you are filling out monotonous expense reports or compiling a weekly data spreadsheet.
Or formatting a document, yeah.
Right, let the machine do it. Eliminate that friction gladly because it serves no developmental purpose. But then there is growth friction.
Growth friction.
Yes. This is the cognitive resistance that teaches you to notice details, to synthesize complex ideas, and to actually care about the outcome.
So when you use AI to remove that.
When you remove growth friction, you aren't saving yourself effort. You are robbing yourself of cognitive development.
And the natural consequence of removing that growth friction across the board is the collapse of attention. Because everything is fast and frictionless, we attempt to do everything simultaneously.
We pack our days with competing demands. We wear our multitasking as this, badge of honor.
Oh, yeah. Sitting in virtual meetings while drafting emails and scrolling through news feeds. We all do it.
We do. But the research consensus, which Hoque highlights, is unequivocal on the cognitive toll. Multitasking reduces comprehension, impairs memory retention, and fundamentally makes us worse at everything we are attempting to do.
And the cost isn't just a drop in productivity, or a few typos in a Slack message.
No, it's much deeper.
The real loss is human presence. When we condition our minds to move at the speed of a frictionless algorithm, we stop being present for ourselves.
And for the people sitting right across the table from us.
Exactly. We spend our lives reacting to pings and prompts, rather than intentionally choosing where to direct our focus.
We allow the external world to dictate our internal pace, which is why a highly actionable takeaway for you listening is to consciously pause before taking the easiest path today.
What's the experiment he suggests?
Try an experiment in reclaiming your attention. Single task for just 1 week.
Just 1 week.
Choose one task, give it your absolute, undivided attention, and protect a window of time that belongs solely to you, isolated from your inbox and your notifications.
I love that. And if we establish that AI strips away the friction needed to stay present in our outer world, the logical consequence is that we eventually turn this technology inward.
Right, stripping away the friction needed to understand ourselves.
Exactly. Which leads into an even more unsettling area of Hoque's piece, the idea of outsourcing our own identity.
Hoque defines this transition as the loss of self and the comfort trap. It is the psychological fallout of pointing a fictionless tool at our own internal narratives.
To frame this, he brings in an iconic quote from Joan Didion. We tell ourselves stories to live.
Such a powerful quote.
It really is. The premise is that human beings make sense of our messy, complicated, often contradictory experiences by shaping them into a narrative structure.
Because the underlying mechanism at play here is that storytelling is not simply a method of communicating an already fully formed thought. No. Storytelling is the act of self-creation. The physical and mental struggle of sitting at a desk, staring at a blank screen, and trying to find the precise word for a complex emotion. That struggle is how you figure out what you were actually feeling.
The thought doesn't really exist until you write it.
Exactly. The thought doesn't exist in its final form until you wrestle it into existence.
But wait, I want to push back on this a little because I imagine many people listening might be thinking the same thing.
Sure, go ahead.
If the AI can write my emotional email or reflection better and more eloquently than I can, why does it matter if I struggle to write it? I mean, aren't better words just better words?
It's a fair question.
Right. If my friend receives a more empathetic, perfectly phrased email and I saved an hour of agonizing over the keyboard, isn't that a net positive?
This raises an important question about separating the product from the process.
Okay.
If you are writing a routine project update, the product is all that matters. The communication is purely transactional. Let the AI write it.
Sure.
But when you are writing about your internal struggles, a rift in a relationship, or your aspirations, that is identity work. Writing is the mechanism by which the brain processes emotion.
So the struggle is the point.
Yes. When you prompt an AI to shape those stories for you, you aren't just adopting someone else's words. You are amputating the internal cognitive process through which you actually become yourself.
Wow. So the messy draft is the entire point. Because the messy draft is the tangible evidence of my brain actively untangling my emotions.
Exactly. And if you let the algorithm untangle the emotion, your brain never builds the neural pathways required to process that kind of situation in the future.
So our capacity for emotional regulation and self-understanding just atrophies.
It does. And this deep-seated desire to avoid the messy, uncomfortable work of being human leads directly into what Hoque calls the comfort trap.
Oh, right. The social media parallel.
Yeah, he draws a rather chilling parallel here between our current adoption of AI and our recent societal history with social media.
He points out that we had the data on social media early on. We knew the platforms were damaging. We knew the algorithms were intentionally feeding us enraging content because, anger drives engagement and keeps users scrolling.
We saw the rising anxiety metrics in teenagers.
I saw all of it. And yet, collectively, we did almost nothing. We just watched it happen.
Because by the time society decided it was time to intervene, the behavioral pathways were already entrenched in billions of people, and the systemic damage was profound.
And Hoque warns that we are repeating this exact behavioral pattern with AI.
We see the risks. We read the academic papers on cognitive erosion and the societal implications of deepfakes.
And we just scroll past.
We just assume a regulatory body or a brilliant engineer will eventually solve the problem on our behalf.
He breaks down the psychology of this inaction by highlighting the difference between tolerance and acceptance. We like to tell ourselves we're being accepting of this new technological era, but in reality we are merely tolerating it.
And tolerance frequently masquerades as patience. We tell ourselves we are just waiting to see how things shake out.
Right.
But psychologically, tolerance is often just a respectable mask for avoidance. We tolerate a situation when we lack the tools or the willpower to deal with it.
While true acceptance is entirely different.
Acceptance means looking at reality unflinchingly, acknowledging all the flaws, the dangers, and the discomfort, and choosing to actively engage with it anyway.
So if we are outsourcing our internal narratives and we are blindly tolerating the encroachment of tech into our identity out of a desire for comfort, we inevitably hit a structural wall.
A massive one.
We're left facing a massive problem. How do we actually make good decisions about our future?
This is the culmination of the previous losses. Hoque identifies this as the crisis of judgment and the urgent need for reclaiming agency.
I'm struggling to see how saving time and delegating tasks is ever a bad thing when it comes to decision-making, though.
Well,
Because AI promises to liberate us from the daily grind, right? It analyzes the data sets, it graphs the proposals, it optimizes the schedules, it takes over the doing. Doesn't that free us up to make better decisions?
it frees up the time, certainly. But as AI takes over the execution of tasks, it radically increases the burden on human judgment. Someone still has to choose what is actually worth doing in the first place. Hoque brings in a foundational framework from the management thinker Peter Drucker to illustrate why this is so precarious. Drucker made a sharp distinction between efficiency and effectiveness.
I've heard of this.
Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things.
And AI is the ultimate efficiency engine. It multiplies our capacity to do things exponentially.
But effectiveness, knowing what actually matters, knowing what to prioritize, applying ethical and contextual human insight, that remains entirely our responsibility.
So if we have allowed our attention to collapse,
And we have outsourced the friction required to build our sense of self, our judgment is fundamentally compromised.
wow.
The danger is that because AI allows us to execute work 10 times faster, the cost of executing the wrong work is suddenly multiplied by 10.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's visualize this. Imagine AI is like strapping a massive, hyper-efficient rocket engine to your life.
Okay, I like this.
You are suddenly moving at warp speed, bypassing all the slow, manual labor of the past. But if you have outsourced your judgment, if you let go of the steering wheel because you implicitly trust the rocket's efficiency, getting to the wrong destination 10 times faster isn't a victory.
It's a catastrophe.
It's a total crash.
And the sheer volume of output and the unprecedented velocity of change actually triggers a paralysis response. When the ground is constantly shifting beneath our feet and generative models are rapidly reshaping entire industries in a matter of months, the natural human psychological response is to freeze.
The cognitive load just becomes overwhelming.
Exactly, which breeds a sense of powerlessness. And powerlessness breeds passivity. We stop steering and just let the rocket take us wherever the algorithm dictates.
So how do we grab the steering wheel back? Hoque shares a deeply personal, vulnerable example of how to begin this process.
Yes, back to the music.
Right. He talks about listening to that same Simon and Garfunkel song from his childhood, The Boxer, but listening to it now as a man in his 50s.
He notes a profound realization. The song hasn't changed at all. The acoustic recording is identical to the one on the cassette tape he hunted down in Bangladesh.
But he has changed.
Yes, his life experiences have altered his interpretive lens. And by intentionally returning to this deeply familiar touchstone, he heard something completely new in the lyrics.
He felt a profound tenderness for the young man he once was.
And that emotional connection became a source of strength and clarity for him in the present.
Returning to something old to figure out how to move forward.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, reclaiming our agency in an era of rapid technological acceleration doesn't require us to have absolute certainty about what the future holds.
Because no one has that certainty right now.
Exactly. Reclaiming agency requires grounding. Returning to a past song, a beloved book, or a daily analog practice that has sustained you in the past is not an act of regression.
You aren't just hiding in nostalgia to escape the present.
No, you are bringing the evolved person you have become today to the things you thought you knew. In doing so, you rediscover your own foundation. You anchor your human judgment so the rocket engine doesn't just spin you out of control.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a lot of psychological ground today. examining the 6 subtle losses Hoque identifies.
The loss of effort, the collapse of attention, the erosion of our sense of self.
The psychological trap of comfort, the crisis of human judgment, and the surrender of our agency. And the most terrifying thread connecting all of these concepts is that none of them announce their arrival.
They really don't.
They slip in silently, disguised as a software update.
By the time you notice your attention span has fractured, or your ability to sit with a complex, uncomfortable emotion has faded, the mental habits that once sustained you have already withered away.
But because these losses happen through small, daily surrenders of friction, you can reverse them through small, deliberate acts of resistance.
You don't need to throw your smartphone in a river.
Right? You don't have to move off the grid. You don't have to tackle all 6 of these areas before breakfast tomorrow.
Pick just one area to reclaim.
Yeah.
The next time you need to write something of emotional significance, an apology, a journal entry, a note of gratitude to a partner, force yourself to write a messy, imperfect draft in your own unpolished voice. Do the cognitive work.
Or decide to consciously slow down and single task for just 1 hour tomorrow.
Or at the end of your workday today, review the tasks you delegated to an AI tool and critically ask yourself why you handed them over. Was it purely procedural friction, or did you inadvertently bypass growth friction?
Hoque leaves his readers with a framing that might be the defining question of our generation. As machines become capable of executing almost everything for us, the pressing question is no longer what can they do.
The question is, what are we willing to keep doing for ourselves?
It is ultimately a question of choosing where we want to apply our humanity and where we are willing to embrace the struggle.
It really is.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you listening with a brand new thought to mull over, building on everything we've just explored about the self and the storytelling process.
Okay.
Imagine a near future where an AI system has learned your communication style, your memories, and your psychological profile so perfectly that it can write your deepest, most profound emotional reflections for you.
A complete digital mirror.
Yeah. And your closest loved ones read those words and cannot even tell the difference. They are moved to tears.
The output is utterly indistinguishable from your own soul.
If that happens, does the internal, messy human struggle to actually create those thoughts still matter? Or is the human experience ultimately just about the emotional impact those words have on the people reading them?
It forces us to decide if the value of our lives lies in the process or merely in the product.
Something to think about the next time you find yourself reaching for the easy button. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening.